design there. Okay, Mr. Cosgrove, are we ready?
We are ready.
Okay. I call to order a meeting of the Wilsonville City Council for the work session at 5:56 p.m. on March 7th, 2022. And can we do a review of the agenda check and items on consent? Do any councilors have any comments on that? I'm not seeing any.
No.
And now, do we have any councilor concerns? And this might be a chance I could bring something up that is a big topic for discussion right now, one of the topics, and that is that the mandate for mask wearing is being lifted, and I would like to see us resume our in-person meetings of the council starting at our next meeting, which is March 21st. Does anybody have any, response to that? Yes, Council President Ockerville.
I do. I actually was planning on attending that meeting, but will be out of town. It's a spring break week, so there's a window off of school time. So I was going to be out of town that week, but had, plan to attend. So
Logistically, yeah.
Yeah, if I could attend via a virtual connection, that would be great, and I would be able to continue to do that. Or
yeah, we can accommodate that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we didn't know when this would be listed. So given that, which I thought could be the case, that is spring break week. I just thought I would try that. Then it seems to me that maybe we should have that continue with the remote meeting for that week as people switch over to in-person meetings. The idea of, because how would we, I'm personally not that enthusiastic about doing a hybrid unless it's in a really big need, going forward, where some people are in person and some people are remote. I think it would be hard to have good communication. Going into April. Any thoughts on that?
It might allow staff some more time to reacclimate and figure out any glitches that might, if you wait until the first meeting in April, just give us a little extra time.
Yeah.
But we can always accommodate one counselor being remote. If it's more than one, that becomes a lot more problematic.
Well, I'm fine waiting till April. What I guess I meant going on after that.
Yeah.
How does it, so if we start, I'd rather just kind of wait till April then and start in person the first meeting in April.
But it could be that Councilor West is also caught up in spring break.
Right.
And that would be April 4th, Mayor. And that would give us time to get messaging out to the community that we're effective first meeting in April. We're going back to in-person council meetings. So from a messaging and logistics standpoint, that date I think would work well for staff as well.
Okay.
So I have a question then. I'm actually fine with the April 4th date. I guess my question is going to be, has a decision been made about whether masks would be required in any of the facilities that the city owns, and including Parks and Rec and library and a community center, and masking at the council meeting on the 4th for visitors, that kind of thing. So I have been asked by some citizens about what the city is going to do if we are going to go with the state guidelines, or if we would continue to require masks indoor. So I'd like to kind of at least hear from the city manager about that.
Yeah, we've had extensive conversations internally about programming services, employee safety, and we have always followed the state guidelines on that and would continue to do so. The hard part of this is that, you know, if you're thinking about people that are unvaccinated or people with underlying health conditions, there's going to be continued anxiety and concern about that. And there's no easy answer for that, Councilor Linville, other than to say we will respect individual choice, whether it comes to employees or visitors, whether they want to wear a mask. And so that will be an individual choice. So having a requirement by city government that's a lot more stringent than the state, I think that becomes a problem in terms of interactions with visitors to city facilities. We're already getting pushback from some patrons of the library who are refusing to wear masks. So putting my employees in the position of being, you know, enforcers of localized mask mandates, I think becomes very problematic. So I think the long and short is that we will, whatever the state requires, that's what we will require. And they're following CDC guidance and OHA.
But I get that, I understand it, and that's fine. I just and I think I've verbalized this to the mayor that there are times that I'm going to wear a mask because I can't go visit my grandson if I've been exposed even to just a cold anymore. So I guess the issue is I'm hoping that if we have employees, visitors, or elected officials, staff, who choose to wear a mask, that there is not it doesn't become stigmatized in any way.
We've already made that clear to our employees that we will not do that, and our employees would not do that either. So yes, I think everybody understands that everybody has different circumstances that they have to think about, and we respect those individual choices.
Good.
And if there's a way we can, if we find that we need to clarify that at our council meeting because of some response, I would be very committed to clarifying that and doing what we need to do to have great, you know, very productive meetings without unnecessary interruptions. The one other question I had, and maybe nobody knows the answer to this yet, but it's regarding the population, if you call that the numbers of people that can be in a room. Is the state still offering that? Do we know, you know, for example, before the pandemic, it was so many people could be in a room. And now there are some other concerns with people who have certain sensitivities to a lower level of population density in closed rooms. Have you heard if there's going to be any guidance along those lines?
I have not seen any, and I think the lifting of the mask mandate should probably tell you everything you need to know about. Like, there was a time here, probably during the first, 18 months of the pandemic, that we had occupancy numbers on all of our meeting rooms, and we lifted those a while ago. So the social distancing aspect of this has kind of been gone. It's gone, basically. So that's why, Mayor, I reached out to you about the budget committee meeting, because there's no way we could offer any social distancing. So having that meeting remote this year seems to make some sense, because we are still close to this pandemic. But in terms of individual programming and stuff, those are all conversations we have to have with the various departments about trying to have discussions with people about what their, you know, their level of concerns are and whatever anxieties they have about this, and making sure that they feel safe and informed about what the city's policies are going forward. So there's a lot of communication stuff going on as we speak, and more that needs to be done.
And then I just have one more question, and that is, what has been the decision around quarantining for staff and employees that test positive? Is there still going to be some guidance in place from HR about that?
Yes, we have worked on that messaging and shared that with our employees as well. As you know, those rules have changed significantly recently too, that you can actually come to work with COVID, apparently, if you've been vaccinated. So we're asking our employees if they're sick. We always tell them, if you're sick, please don't come to work because you'll just spread it. So our employees, we've definitely had many, many conversations about that subject.
Okay. Well, we get asked, so I would like to be able to tell some of our citizens if I get asked what's happening.
Sure.
And part of the communication, general communication, ought to have to do with one of the differences between now and in the beginning of the pandemic is that we have beefed up our ventilation systems on virtually all our buildings, is my understanding, both in terms of filtration and air changes. So these are, in effect, different buildings than they were at the beginning of the pandemic.
Yes, that should be part of the messaging on the buildings that we could, of course. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I would like to just round out this discussion with the willingness to come back to this topic if we find that we're uncomfortable with how things are going. What do you think?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that'll be the case for all the boards and the commissions as well. So, I mean, like the Tourism Commission, because of the nature of that committee, Zoe has asked me, is it okay for them to continue to do remote? And just because of the nature of their jobs, and that most of them tend to appear during the workday. So we're going to make accommodations where we can, where we have the ability to do so. We'll continue to do that.
And then one last point, where people want to come to a council meeting or testify, they still can do that by phone, email. There are ways they can testify without showing up in person still.
That's
right?
correct, Mayor.
Okay. Would it be, I think we will have minutes on this, but it would be great, Mr. Cosgrove, if you could provide us with a brief written summary of what we decided.
Yeah, well, you will get that in the minutes in the next packet. But yes, we'll try and summarize this conversation tonight in some way, or tomorrow or the next day, and get that out to you. And then I'll also share with you some of the communications that we've had internally with staff so that you have that as background just in case you get questions.
Okay, thank you. Any other councilor concerns? Okay, we will move on to our 45-minute discussion and long packet, lots of detail on the Frog Pond East and South Master Plan. And we have enough time, it looks like. We won't rush you.
Good evening, Council. So let's get right into this, as we do have quite a bit to talk about tonight. For the record, I'm Dan Pauly, the Planning Manager, and the project manager for the city on this project. Also with me tonight, I have Becky Hewitt with Eco Northwest, as well as Joe Dills and Andrew Parrish, who are with Angelo Planning Group, which is now part of MIG after a recent acquisition. So what we want to talk about tonight is twofold. Primarily, we'll be talking about affordable housing and the affordable housing analysis that was recently done. And following up on that, we will do a brief introduction of the Neighborhood Commercial Center evaluation and get councilors' insights on that project, that component that's just moving forward. So let's get into affordable housing. So really on this one, as related in the council staff report, We're looking at an affordable housing target for Frog Pond East and South, which is built on an action item from the Equitable Housing Strategic Plan. And one specific language that's used in the Equitable Housing Strategic Plan to talk about a target out here is making sure it's reasonably achievable. And we'll be coming back to those words. Really, this affordable housing analysis that Eco Northwest has done is proving to be an important tool for setting the target, understanding barriers as well as some technical numbers around setting this target. I do want to emphasize how, as we look at this target, it's not intended to solve all the different affordable housing issues that are going on in the community, in the region, in the state, and in the nation, but it's part of the multi-pronged approach and one of a variety of actions from the Equitable Housing Strategic Plan that altogether aim to make an impact on affordable housing in Wilsonville. So with that introduction, I want to invite Becky or Joe if they have any initial comments before we go forward with the presentation.
And none from me, Dan. Thank you.
Okay. So particularly tonight, I want to touch on affordable housing targets for households that make less than 80% of the median family income. Particularly around in looking at these targets for this market segment of the population is about balancing ownership and rental opportunities, which is something that council's had a goal concerning and that we discussed the last work session. The project team has continued to explore the affordable home ownership and what possibilities are out there. The exploration has looked at what's reasonably achievable and what barriers exist to affordable home ownership programs. The targets being presented tonight balance the affordable ownership and with affordable rental projects, especially in the short term, because of funding and barriers outside the city's control. So particularly significant barriers I mentioned is qualifying for mortgage, particularly for households making 60% or less of median family income, as well as legal risks for developers for condo development and financing challenges with some of the different housing types. So with that in mind, really what we're looking at are some short-term achievable actions that we're aware there's funding mechanisms while making sure regulatory barriers for other opportunities aren't there. So as part of that, it's important to keep in mind that Frog Pond East and South are a bigger area than Frog Pond West, and a longer build-out is expected. In particular, we do know that much of the area will need to wait to develop until a major project to put in a new sewer trunk line occurs, current estimated completion 2027 or later. So we want to make sure, while looking at short-term projects, that we also make sure that we're thinking about providing opportunities long-term as more ideas and other funding opportunities or other barriers may get addressed better over time. So with that, I will hand it over to Becky Hewitt with Eco Northwest to talk about some specifics from the affordable housing analysis. So Becky?
Thanks, Dan, and good evening, councilors. Becky Hewitt with Eco Northwest. We took a look at a number of factors in putting together these proposed targets. We looked at the city's overall housing need and income distribution, and we took a look at what the available funding sources are to deliver affordable housing that's income restricted or that has a subsidy to make it more affordable that the market can deliver. So these targets here are we're sort of backing into a number of units that might be achievable based on an assumed number and scale of development projects that the city might be able to help make them happen. The city would not build them, but that the city might be able to contribute to making them possible. So the most common form of affordable housing development is multifamily rental housing. There are a number of state and federal programs that are available to provide that subsidy, and it can be delivered at a little bit larger scale. So 120 to 180 units is pretty typical on something like 4 to 6 acres in a suburban community like Wilsonville. And so one development like that, that could provide the greatest number of affordable units for this area. So the city, in order to make that happen, would need to ensure that multifamily is allowed and might consider some ways to support that development financially or through land acquisition. But that's one target, would be to try to get one project that's a multifamily rental project with state or federal funds. And then the other two, a cottage cluster development or something along those lines, and then 1 to 2 townhome or cottage cluster developments that are for home ownership. Those projects, there are state and federal funds that can support that type of development, but they're more limited or more competitive. So it's a little bit less certain that a nonprofit organization or an affordable housing developer would be able to secure the state or federal funds to be able to deliver that type of development. But the cottage cluster, you see sometimes housing that is for very low income households or for low income seniors, veterans, people with disabilities, in that kind of cottage cluster or lower density range. And the scale of the development can vary from just a couple of units up to a larger project closer to 50 units. So trying to target one project that would still be rental, that might be a deeper level of affordability or hit some specific housing needs. That would be a little bit more of a stretch, but a good goal to try to meet a broader range of needs. And then on the homeownership side, townhome or cottage cluster development, something like Habitat for Humanity or a land trust development, something like that. You might see between 10 and 40 units roughly on an acre or two, generally serving first-time homeowners that are earning less than 80% of median family income. So that gives you some sense of kind of the amount of affordable development that if the city were to put some different policies in place and try to provide some support. I think these things are all possible, but they're none of them guaranteed. The affordable housing developers, there is state and federal funding, but it can be very hard for them to acquire land in a competitive situation. And if they aren't able to acquire the land, they aren't able to build the housing. So we can go to the next slide and talk about some of the strategies that are needed to make this possible. At the top of the list here is zoning for all housing types, including multifamily, because that first one on the list, if you don't allow for multifamily, you're ruling out the sort of easiest, most achievable type of affordable housing, which is the multifamily rental housing. So zoning for all housing types at least makes sure that even if you did nothing else, if an affordable housing developer can acquire the land, can put the financing together, they could build affordable housing in the area. The next most important thing would be to proactively try to acquire land and then transfer it for affordable housing development. That would have a huge impact on an affordable housing developer's ability to make a project happen. Beyond that, having SDCs waived, reduced, or deferred, partnering with the community land trust, providing incentives for smaller and lower cost middle housing, and encouraging builders to include ADUs. Those are all things that are sort of stepping down in the level of financial commitment that it requires from the city. Those can all help expand the range of options and the variety of price points of housing in the area, but they don't have quite as much impact as some of the ones on the top of the list. So with that, I think I'll pass it back to Dan to talk about the feedback we've got on those.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Becky. And so the Planning Commission had a great discussion. I don't know if any of the council members had a chance to go and review any of that or were able to tune in. But I want to just briefly summarize what we heard from the Planning Commission. There were some commissioners that expressed a desire to see more affordable housing. At some point you look at this and it's like, that's not very much. But commissioners generally felt that the discussed target was the right direction to be both assertive on the city standpoint and reasonably achievable. There was a lot of talk about the importance of land cost and its important consideration, and is there anything the city can do around land. And the commissioners emphasized how the proposed target requires the city to do things it hasn't done before. It does, and around land control and other housing programs. And to continue to develop the city's housing program. And that the city really should focus on what it must do to enable the targets to occur. There was a discussion and a desire for housing not to be isolated by type, not to have all big projects here, but to be able to mix it, have mixed income neighborhoods and blocks throughout Frog Pond East and South. There was support of the multifamily component, and stated multifamily rental housing is necessary to meet affordable housing targets and housing needs generally. One good suggestion was that we plan to do was to compare and contrast the targets we're looking at what was built and envisioned and built in Billboard. And overall, for the list of strategies, the commission supported the list and felt good that it was the right direction. So with that, before moving on, wanted to turn it back to council then for, first of all, about affordable housing targets. Is it the right direction? Do you feel they're reasonably achievable? And does it create the appropriate balance of ownership and rental opportunities? And then just generally about the housing strategies presented, whether you support pursuing these strategies and what guidance the council has for the project team to continue to refine these. So I'll turn it back to you, Mayor.
Thank you, Dan. Councilors, do you have any comments?
Oh, I was trying to figure in the discussion about affordable housing types. Maybe I just didn't hear it. But are we talking about some things that are subsidized either by the city or other nonprofits? Are we talking about some things, for instance, that would be like Northwest Housing Alternatives or any of the number of others that are on the agenda tonight for tax abatement? We have projects throughout the city that are subsidized in one form or another, either by a nonprofit or HUD or someone. So are we talking about that kind of affordable housing in addition to builders who are building affordable housing?
Yeah, so, and as outlined in the staff report, broadly we're referring to both, but the affordable housing analysis specifically is looking at where there's government support and nonprofits involved, where it's not naturally occurring market rate affordable. There is, as outlined in affordable housing analysis, talking about that 80 to 120% of MFI. Correct me if I'm wrong, Becky, but I believe doing a lot of middle housing, things like that, about half, including market rate multifamily, you'd end up with about probably half of the market rate units affordable to that 80 to 120% MFI. But when you're talking about below 80%, it really would be subsidized. The city or other nonprofits, government grants from state, federal agencies contributing in some way.
Yeah, because our role, for instance, in the development of Creekside was we played a critical role in
Correct.
doing that, as did was that Northwest Housing Alternatives?
Yes,
I think so. So it was a partnership with a nonprofit. But and then the other thing that is not, I guess I don't know where it is on the affordable housing spectrum, but that was proposed but didn't come to pass, near as I know, in Frog Pond West, was the co-housing model.
Yeah, and I understand that was a market rate co-housing, and I mean that'd still be allowed. The cottage cluster, in the marketing and the financing of those can be challenging. But I mean, any of that gets back to, we want to make sure there's not barriers to any creative solution that someone is able to put together.
Yeah.
So I had along those lines on the attachment Exhibit 1 from Eco Northwest. There's the chart that goes across horizontally from permanent supportive housing, which is not what we're describing here, to income restricted affordable housing. And that is for people who are under 60% of MFI. And then when we go to mixed, the third level that they show is this mixed income housing and affordable home ownership, which is targeting people which is usable, I guess is the word, for people at 60 to 80% of MFI. So is that middle bar the one that we're looking at here?
Mayor, which page are you on?
Well, it is page 14. It's page 14 in the staff report. And it's actually page 3 in the Eco Northwest report within that.
So Mayor, I think you can see on this page, so we're talking about all of those. So that, like, the cottage cluster here would be for that more supportive housing for low-income seniors, veterans, making less than 30% of MFI.
Okay.
And then the multifamily kind of traditional, like we see elsewhere in the city, looking at 60% of MFI, that really nonprofit built. And then kind of that mixed income, 60 to 80% would be the townhomes or cottage cluster. And then looking beyond that would be the lower cost market rate that the government will be able to deliver.
To achieve that, the second bar that says cottage cluster with the under 30% of MFI, I'm presuming that would be if you could get an arrangement with a group that is focused on providing housing for seniors, veterans, and disabilities. That's that qualification that we would have to find that group to partner with, right?
Yeah, you need the partner, you need the land, you need to go for competitive state or federal funding. So you need a whole variety of things to come together to be able to do a project like that.
Just to clarify, if I could, that could be housing for households earning less than 30% of median family income, or it could be more of a special population like low-income seniors, veterans, or people with disabilities that might not be below the 30% of median family income.
Okay.
One of the more competitive state and federal funding sources prioritizes meeting those harder to meet needs. So populations with special housing needs or the lowest income households, and that tends to fund smaller development projects. So that's one possible way that that could be delivered. There are also other examples that are at the small side that are more like a housing authority has 4 cottage cluster units and they do it as a veterans village or something like that. So that those are sort of more examples of the types of population that type of development could serve, but it wouldn't necessarily check all of those boxes. Those are just some of the types of populations that might be served through a sort of smaller, more specialized affordable housing development.
Thank you.
So just so I'm following correctly here, is for instance, Canyon Creek, the small lot Canyon Creek development, would that come under this next to the last box? Small for sale housing units, some apartments built by market rate developers. Is that where that would fall in that 100 to 120 MFI?
Yeah, I want to make sure I'm referring to the right project. Are you talking about like Canyon Creek Meadows?
Canyon Creek, the small lot Canyon Creek, 2,800 square foot lots.
Like the one that was done.
The first one that Morissette did.
Yeah.
Not the later one that's further north.
Yeah, I know the one you're talking about. I don't think that you're probably talking even smaller units, smaller lots in today's market to do that. To get to that 100, 120. I mean, when you're looking at your typical size, 5 to 6,000 square foot lot out there selling for in the 700 or 800s, I mean.
But that one is 2,800 square foot lots.
Yeah, so you're getting that or potentially even smaller where, it's detached units on a shared lot or stacked flats or something like that, or condos. Or really townhouses where you're looking at attached units.
Okay, because it's hard for me to figure, and that was very specially designed to be single lots, but it's hard to imagine going much smaller than 2,800 square foot lot and being a single family, right?
Yeah, well, we're talking middle housing here too, so.
Yeah.
No,
I understand there'll be larger ones, but I was just trying to figure something to get in my brain about what we're talking when we say small for sale housing units. Is that like a 2,800 square foot thing, or you're telling me it's more like a 2,000 square foot thing? Because I don't see how you do that.
Well, you probably, specifically here for 80 first-time home buyers and that segment, you're probably looking at middle housing. So that could be either townhouses, cluster, or clusters where it's a shared property with individual homes on it.
But the 100 to 120,
So we had
that model.
I'm sorry, you're referring to that same Exhibit 1 diagram in the memo and the
Yes,
the 100 to 120 small for sale. Yes, but our research suggested that that small lot detached, and I'm not familiar with the specific project that you referenced, so I don't know for sure what the pricing is for that one, but that projects like that are sort of sometimes above and sometimes below that, or within that range. So sometimes affordable at less than 120% of median family income, and sometimes more expensive. So they're kind of on that line from the examples that we looked at in Wilsonville and surrounding areas.
Okay. Part of the reason I'm asking is I want to be realistic about what a small lot is, and whether that's a real thing or not. But go ahead.
Well, I see we have a question from Council President Aukerball and Linville. I don't know which one came up first. I'll start with Councilor Linville this time, and then...
No, actually, Actually, it was Counselor Ockervall had her hand up first.
Okay.
Thank you. It's fine though. I'm happy to wait a second. My question, first of all, I really appreciate this report. I felt like there was a lot of information in that staff report for us to chew on. And, I think that it's going to be helpful for our discussion today, but also kind of going forward and as we continue to think about these things. And you talked at the beginning of the presentation about that we need a balance of short-term projects and the long-term projects. And so this is something that we're going to be thinking about for a while. I wondered if there was a couple things mentioned in the report, and also at least the ADUs was discussed some by the Planning Commission, and I don't know if we're moving to that at a separate time today. Are we? Should I save my ADU questions?
You can put them out now, but yeah, we are going to have a slide on ADUs as soon as we're done with this conversation.
Okay. Well, I'm curious, where you have the slide with the kind of the multifamily, the cottage cluster, the townhomes, these different possibilities that we're looking at. And also as we're having this discussion about, what percent of the MFI would each of those possibly hit, I'm curious how ADUs, and also a concept that was brought up in the packet is the multiplex. I believe, how does that fit into the mix as far as what MFIs would a project like that fit with? And are we looking at rental or purchase for either of those? Well, I understand the ADU could be both, but the multiplex, what is that looking like?
Multiplexes could be both as well. And market rate, you're looking at that. Depending on the quality and the location and other market factors, anywhere from 80 to 120 or 120 plus. So,
for both of those, for the ADU and the multiplex?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's still really not getting the less than 80% of the MFI. Okay, right. Interesting. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Linville.
I agree with Council President Ockervall. What a lot of information and very important stuff to consider. So I thank you for all of the input and for the documents that we received at our last work session as well, because I think those documents really do inform this discussion as well. And I wish I had a really good strategy answer to all of this, but I think it just raises for me several really critical issues. And some of the data was from the documents that we previously had at our work session. And that is around rental housing. And while I recognize and was really made very clear in terms of affordability in down payment and financing and some other issues, I have concerns about our community in that Wilsonville already has the highest rate of rental housing from all of the other cities in the metro community. We are balancing somewhere almost at 50% of our housing is rental at the current time, which is, when you go down in terms of our goal as a council in home ownership, this plan creates concern for me. I think it was clear in the previous documents, too, that rental costs and even some of the rental costs that were identified here, if you look at what that is, that it still represents families being burdened with even their rental costs creating housing burden situation. And then probably the other one that just really concerns me is that in documents from the last meeting, it indicated that over 70% of the people who are renting are not families; they're singles. And while I think rental housing meets some of the needs on one side, I'm wondering, what does it do for our families? And what does it do for our council goal in terms of ownership? I get that it is probably the, as you put, I think in the beginning, a reasonably achievable way to get to affordable housing. I just don't know if it's the right strategy. And it still causes me concern that we're not getting to ownership in any substantive way. So I wish I could say that I think it's the right direction. I don't. I think rental and multifamily is an easy way to get housing up and get fill that gap for people, but it doesn't solve our problems.
Thank you, Councilor Linville. Could we go back to that chart again that we've seen a couple of times already with the 3 bars and they're right there? And so maybe just taking off of what Councilor Linville just said and looking at, yes, we know there's a need for housing all over Oregon, and there is housing starting. I just read an article that apartment building in the Portland area has been on the decline, but it's now picking up. And you're both better experts at that than we are, so maybe you can speak to that. But here in Wilsonville, we have been investing in apartments for a long time, and I'm really proud of the fact that we do have some good housing for people. And so if we went with this method here, I guess what we're seeing on the first line is this is just one example, or are you suggesting that in all of Frog Pond we have the capacity of or these 2 sections of Frog Pond? What is our goal for number of housing units for South and East?
In terms of total?
Yes.
So 1,300 plus.
Okay.
The exact number, because of the middle housing and such, hasn't been, but it's like, I believe 1,375 would be the minimum.
Okay.
So
1,375, and if you just glanced at this and looking at the number of acres on 4 to 6 acres of cottage clusters, you could get how many? A couple hundred of those if you had 4 to 6 acres of cottage clusters?
It's 4 to 6, quarter acre. It really depends on the programming. As you can see here, it's a quarter acre to 2 acres, depending on the design and the programming.
But I'd like to see that, because if we think of 1,300 homes as a goal for these 2 areas, and the impact that we could make on giving families and single people some home ownership opportunities in terms of a generational impact and wealth building and stability. I realize it's really difficult to do that, but perhaps we have time now to start working on those challenges, because we have to find a way to get the land into that and have maybe different levels of cost. And just see how far we can go in our 1,300 homes with home ownership opportunities. How do we work that equation?
Well, I mean, it's the funding. Also, keep in mind, we're talking about government-supported housing here. We're not talking about the market rate, which will be the vast majority. And will be a mix of affordability.
So if we divide that up and break our 1,300 homes into the category that would be government supported and the category that would be multifamily, that might be an easier way to evaluate this.
Yes, and I also want to point out, along with this, that when we talk multifamily, we're also talking, as mentioned last time, about condos. Right now, there's still a lot of concern in the market about condos because of liability. That's a reoccurring theme in discussions in the legislature. There's potential within this time frame that there'll be some fixes that make condo development more attractive.
What is some of the liability? Could you outline that a bit, please?
Becky, I don't know if you know that any better than I do, but essentially you have ongoing liability as a developer because of the shell. So Becky, you may be able to talk about that a bit more.
Yeah, there's a, I believe, 10-year long period in which the developer is liable for construction defects, and their probability of being taken to court for that is much higher for condominium development because there's an expensive building, that if there's any water intrusion, there's the condo association can sue for a construction defect, and there's a whole industry of law firms that are make sure that any condo association that may have this sort of concern has their opportunity to take that to court. So it's just a very high risk. Some developers are comfortable building condominiums, but I would say, it's like I hear one developer that is comfortable with it for every 9 that say, I will never do it again. So it's something that many developers are going to get.
We're not necessarily going to find builders that want to do that.
I do know some of the ones that we talked to that are likely to be active in this area. One of the ones that we talked to is one that also happens to be comfortable building condo. So I would say it's despite the legal challenges associated with condos, I would say it is a possibility for this area. You do have some of those developers who could be active here, and so you could see multifamily built as condominium or apartment in this area.
Okay, I see Councilor Lehan has her hand up.
Now I forgot my question. I was following it. Let me pass, it'll come to me.
Okay, so I just realized it's 6:48, Dan, so how do you want to use this time?
So let me just briefly tell you what else I have, and then we can come back to this conversation, or we can continue this conversation, comment on other things. In terms of ADUs, that is a specific part of this that we're exploring. And the city already does a lot around ADUs, and potential changes that have been identified is adding flexibility and exemptions to lot coverage or setbacks. Planning Commission was kind of, depending on that, just wants to be thoughtful about anything we do with setbacks, make sure that they don't have unintended urban design impacts. There was a lot of support on Planning Commission of this suggestion of allowing ADUs with townhouses regardless of lot size. Currently, you have to have your lot size the same as what is required for a single family, detached single family in the zone in order to have an ADU. But if we allowed ADUs on, a situation where there's a ground floor ADU with additional unit above, that could be something that's very attractive to the marketplace. Also, some discussion of larger ADUs provide more options. That our current standard is pretty constant across a lot of jurisdictions, so I haven't heard a lot of interest in that, and Planning Commission really didn't express a strong support one way or the other on that. So we're not really running with that one unless we hear strong support for larger ADUs, but really looking at ADUs, more flexibility to put ADUs in townhouses, as well as, and some flexibility around lot coverage and setbacks to be able to have more situations where a developer would be willing to build an ADU without impacting the size of the main unit. So let me go ahead and go to the next part, and we can come back if you have any questions or comments on ADUs. As I know Councilor Ackerval said. Let me just kind of skip ahead a bit on the commercial analysis. We'll talk a lot more about this in a future work session. Just wanting to let you know that we're moving forward with this and intend to really look at it again. There was thoughts of putting it at the corner of Advance and Stafford. That's being re-examined. Generally, the Planning Commission still likes that location for it, but there's a lot of things we need to look at. We're really looking at market studies and kind of everything that's changed with retail recently to see if this is feasible, and if it is, what makes sense. And how can we make this a success? We don't want vacant retail at this location, you know. So we heard that from Planning Commission, and really I think we have a good team and a good plan to really explore this and make sure that, you know, have a program that's doable, or identify if really it isn't doable in this location. So with that, I'll leave the rest of the time for discuss anything on either of these that council is interested in.
Councilor Linville.
So, Dan, in the this chart shows government-supported housing. Does that, two questions. One, does that mean that market rate for multifamily doesn't apply to these units, or would it apply?
So in terms of, the current recommendation for council's consideration is to allow for multifamily housing broadly. I mean, there's going to be more discussion of what that looks like in terms of mix and urban design and how that works. But to allow it broadly, to allow both opportunities now and in the future for a variety of housing to meet different needs, both in the affordable side as well as market rate side. Because we were kind of finishing up our condo discussion, but if you go on Zillow, anytime in Wilsonville, the most affordable ownership opportunities are our existing condos.
Yeah. And so as I look at kind of, and I don't know whether the medians, we're taking the MFI to be the 95,000, which is the average. I mean, that's kind of the Clackamas County, I think, average rather than, and if we take 60% of that, it's 57,000. I'm just rounding numbers. And then what the housing folks say is that 30% of that annual income is reasonable to be spent on housing, and that would be $1,425 a month. And so I look at the chart that's on page 10 of Eco Northwest, and it looks like that doesn't even get to 2 bedrooms for rental housing on market rate, and that's where my concern comes. And I guess, are you asking us at this point, just general, are we looking at this, or are you saying that we need to put parameters on a certain percentage of the housing would be this, or will the city not control that at all?
Control what precisely? Whether
like would we say out of the total 1,200 or 1,300 units that are for South and don't kill me if I've got a wrong number, but, only X percent can be multifamily? Or is that all going to be market driven? Once we open the floodgate and say, yes, we will allow all of this mixed housing, it's just whatever the developers bring.
No, we'll still zone and we can still move around things. It's not, you can build it 100% multifamily or anything. We can still be strategic about that.
Okay.
And have a balanced approach.
Okay.
Council President Ockerville.
Thank you. And I'm just looking at the clock too, so I need to be quick because we're wrapping this up. But I think your last comment there about having a balanced approach, that's important. I think in balance in so many different ways, right? I think that there is not one housing type that's going to, be the miracle that we're all looking for. So we need a variety of housing types, and we can't have all one kind or another. And, here you're presenting kind of these three options, and I'm bringing up other things. What about the multiplex? What about the ADUs? I'm also interested in the co-op, and we didn't talk about that. And I know there's some lending, kind of hurdles to get over with that, but I wonder if, similar to the condo, if time will help kind of make some new possibilities in the future there. So I hope that we do allow for different approaches, because there isn't going to be one solution. And when we're creating the neighborhood, that we look for a balance in form, in mass, in harmony of design with everything, and that brings many people together in a way that we like to see happen in our city. So I appreciate looking, and as you continue to work on this, to look for different possibilities to find those solutions, because I think we're going to need to be flexible to actually have a lovely variety pan out for us. So thank you. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you. Councilor Lehan.
Yes, I agree with everything that Council President Ockerville said. Variety is the key here, providing as many different kinds of options, both for builders and buyers and renters and for nonprofits. But I wanted to address one other thing, which is not on the agenda exactly for Frog Pond, but I don't know when it comes in, because it didn't come in for Villebois or Frog Pond West, and that's the existing housing that is in there. So unlike Frog Pond West, there are some significant historic buildings in there, and it's not just the Grange Hall. So I think I just want to raise this as an issue for the future, that how we lay it out will depend on whether we can save those units or not. We'll determine that. I understand why we couldn't save the Bischoff house, because, and we my family spent a couple $100,000 moving that house rather than have it be torn down, because it was oriented the wrong way to be salvageable there. But the Cruz house is different, and it's not the only one. So we need to work with those properties in how this is laid out, so we don't unintentionally make them unlivable or unsalvageable or whatever. I have not talked to any owners. I don't know what the situation is, but this is a town that has very few of our original residential buildings. They just go by the by. So we could take some effort to make sure that if they're salvageable, we make them a part of the plan from the beginning.
Good point. And maybe I can give you a call and we can have more conversation about this offline.
Yeah.
Help lead us to where we should be looking out there.
I think that would be a great future conversation, and it reminds me of the theme of building around and incorporating our significant trees, which have now defined some neighborhoods.
Right.
So can we do this?
Good job. We did a good job with that in Bill.
So thank you for bringing that up. And I had one comment. I know we're out of time, but on the commercial center, we're planning quite a few years out here and trying to guess where retail will go. Land is obviously at a premium. Everybody knows this. Are we making a mistake by trying to use some of that land for retail and thereby further, limiting available land for housing, parks, sidewalks, and that? Is there any way to just not sort of limit ourselves because of a long past decision to have retail centers when it may not be worth it?
I think that decision's still up in the air, right? This is a master plan that's refining, and we'll be bringing more information on that to a future work session.
So I think that's to the, my closing thought, just for throwing ideas out here along the lines of what everybody else has said. Who knows? Maybe it's some live work spaces. Maybe it's some things like that look totally different than what we envisioned 15 years ago. But we don't want empty storefronts because of some decision we made 15 years ago.
Yeah, if I could just throw in here, I don't think there's a chance that would happen in this location.
Okay.
We knew at the get-go that Villebois would be a challenge because it was buried. And I wasn't here when the plans were made for Charbonneau, but it was pretty clear almost from the get-go that even the people in Charbonneau have a hard time finding the village center, let alone anybody who doesn't live in Charbonneau. So those two, to use those as examples of neighborhood commercial, they are not apropos. This one could be fabulously successful because of Stafford Road.
Because of the major streets.
Stafford Road and Beckman. Villebois and Charbonneau have nothing close to that in terms of traffic.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We have reached the end of the period, so where does that, what say you?
I say we need...
I would just say...
Go ahead.
If I could just add, feel free to call me and we can have further conversations because I can see many of you still have thoughts, so happy to have those conversations with you on one-on-one.
Did you get the input and direction you needed, Dan, to move it forward?
I think we're at a decent spot, yeah.
Okay. Perfect.
Thank you for your flexibility, and we have a lot more reading and thinking to do here. And I encourage city councilors to call staff and talk with them, go in and meet with them, and explore some of these ideas. Well, with that, I think we should adjourn the work session, and we will reconvene at 7:10. The work session is adjourned.
Clear for takeoff, Mayor.
I will call to order a meeting of the Wilsonville City Council for our regular meeting on March 7th, 2022 at 7:12 p.m. And we'll start by asking the city recorder to call the roll.
Councillor Linville?
Here.
Councillor West?
Here.
Council President Akroval?
Here.
Councillor Lehan?
Here.
Mayor Fitzgerald?
Here. Thank you. And will the city manager please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the order of agenda as presented?
Your Honor, I move to approve the order of agenda as presented.
Second?
Second.
Motion has been moved and seconded. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Thank you. So, starting with some mayor's notes on things that have been, that we've been working on, I'm glad to say that our city has our state representative, Courtney Neron of House District 26, to thank for a grant of $1.9 million with local and statewide significance that was determined through the last couple of days in the legislature to help fill a gap in the financing plan for this proposed affordable housing development that we've been working on at the Wilsonville Transit Center, which we've been referring to as the transit-oriented affordable housing. So it's excellent news, and we're very pleased about that. And so these funds will really allow the city to utilize the space on the ground floor for purposes such as a smart transit information center and other supportive services that are part of that type of development, such as an office for Wilsonville Community Sharing, Food Bank, Social Services Referral Agency, and possibly child care. So that's really exciting news, and really appreciate Representative Neron's support for the City Council's vision of providing this affordable housing option with transit-oriented development at the Wilsonville Transit Center. And so this kind of development allows residents to have ready access to free transit for our smart transit service throughout Wilsonville and to the metro area via SMART and TriMet's West commuter train, and also connections to Canby and Salem. So the project aligns, I want to also celebrate that it aligns with our council goals and the city's equitable housing strategic plan. So we can all use some great news, and that's some right there for us. In fact, speaking of Representative Neron, the city is hosting her for a Wilsonville town hall that she's going to be holding on Saturday, March 12th at 10 a.m. via Zoom. Representative Neron will give constituents an update on the 2022 legislative short session. You can register on the city's website for this town hall. One of the things that we'll be discussing at tonight's meeting is the City Council's on the consent agenda. Just wanted to call it out because it does relate to our discussion that we just had about addressing housing needs, and we will be looking at a series of resolutions and approving those in our consent agenda that provide property tax exemptions to support local affordable housing options. And just to recap what that is, residents who qualify for various affordable housing include lower income residents and seniors on fixed incomes, as well as special populations and behavioral health issues. The City Council, as we've discussed at our meetings previously and also earlier tonight, it was mentioned by Councilor Lehan, for many decades has supported efforts to provide affordable housing options for our diverse community. So tonight's action on the consent agenda regarding this supports 365 residential units of affordable housing, and that's a bit over half of Wilsonville's 630 total units of affordable housing. And as you can read in the packet, there's a tremendous amount of detail about this in our packet, but the total value of property tax exemptions for these 5 multifamily communities is just over $400,000, with the city providing $78,000 of that, and other taxing jurisdictions like the school district, fire district, county, and others supporting over $322,000. Couple of things about meetings in the last couple of weeks since we've met. This is a time for me to describe this, and other counselors who have attended meetings regarding city business as part of their work as a city councilor will report on their work under counselor comments, and where there's overlap, I'll try to just be really brief so that others can report on it. You'll probably hear a little bit more about this later, but Councilor Lehan and the city's community development director, Chris Namsu, participated on behalf of the city during the second Aurora State Airport Master Planning Advisory Committee last week, and they're our representatives on that PAC, as we call it. Following that meeting, the PAC meeting, the Oregon Department of Aviation held an airport master plan open house that Councilor Linville and I also attended, and as did Councilor Lehan for part of the time. They switched off so that we didn't have any 2 people there at any one time. Also, other city, in addition, Mayor Asher of Aurora and I, and members of the public, listened and made testimony along with the others who were in the meeting. I hope that the next time that we have a PAC meeting, the materials that are made available to the public will be given out by the Department of Aviation much sooner. It was a very detailed packet, lots of material, and it was only provided 1 business day in advance of the meeting. So that kind of action really makes it difficult to have meaningful public engagement, and we would like to see that change. Another monthly meeting that I attended on a different subject is the Clackamas County Coordinating Committee, and these are the cities in Clackamas County. I attend this on a regular basis, and Councilor Linville is also the alternate, so she also attends this a lot. At the last meeting, we elected Mayor Tammy Stemple of Gladstone to be our representative on the C4 Executive Committee. There are just lots of things we advocate for there, and so we have to have some levels of representation to carry our actions and decisions forward. At that meeting, though, we heard a presentation by a woman named Bridget Daisy, who is Executive Director of the Clackamas Workforce Partnership. And this is one of the areas of interest that we have brought forward in the Clackamas Coordinating Committee that all the city mayors and city councilors attended wanted to hear about. And the Clackamas Workforce Partnership is a federally designated Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act local workforce board, and it works with employers, colleges, schools, training programs, and other groups to advance workforce implementation for employers and employees. And we know in Wilsonville, as many other jurisdictions around Oregon, that there's a great need for people to fill some wonderful job opportunities that we have here in Wilsonville. And Councilor Linville has been working on that. You'll hear a little bit more from her, but I want to thank her because she has made an inquiry to this board to be involved and asking for an advisory position there. So we'll look forward to seeing if they can allow and find a way to have more expertise and input in that board so that Wilsonville can participate. So upcoming meetings are listed in the package. I encourage people to look at that, and also just reminding us that on Saturday, March 12th at 10 a.m., you'll see on the city website that we are hosting a town hall for Representative Courtney Neron, and I again want to thank her for her work in leading to help us get the funding gap closed for the transit-oriented development, or helping with that. And our next city council meeting will be Monday, March 21st. We have decided that our next meeting will be held remotely, by the way, and we're planning to begin meeting in person in April. So that brings us to our communications section of the meeting, and we have a presentation by Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue. Thank you.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay? Great. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. My name is Kenny Frentress. I'm the Deputy Chief of Operations for Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue. It's my honor to be here tonight with you to go over the state of the district. I'd be happy to answer questions along the way or at the very end, whichever you choose. I'm going to share my screen here. Can you guys see that okay?
Yes.
You can see the presentation. Okay, great. And as I mentioned, if you want to interrupt me and you have a question, we'll just field them as we go, or at the end, we can save them too. So we've had a very challenging year, as you can imagine. This is the second year as we've tried to navigate the ever-changing pandemic. We had a significant ice storm, an extreme heat wave, and ongoing wildfires. But we've been focused and we've been able to provide fast and effective emergency services to all of our communities during that very challenging time. We have had some staffing issues as we've had some folks leave through retirement, as well as injury and illness, and then the transient nature of people coming and going through isolation and quarantine when they've unfortunately been COVID positive. But we have help on the way. We recently graduated Paramedic Academy, and we have 25 firefighters that are in an academy right now, and they will hit the line June 1st. And actually, for the foreseeable future of the next 2 to 3 years, we're going to have 2 academies per year just to keep up with our projected retirements. We have about 38% of our managers and chiefs that can retire or are eligible over the next 5 years. So we are constantly working to develop our future leaders through our development programs. We have an apparatus operator development program, lieutenant, captain, and battalion chief. You can see the picture on the left where above officer development, that's a picture of Captain Karen Buriker. She's our new captain at Station 54. We have 7% of our career firefighters at Tualatin Valley are female, which is actually higher than the national average of 4%, but we know that we can do more and we can do better. So we have a significant focus on outreach and recruitment, and every year for the last, I think, 3 to 4 years, we've held a girls' fire camp at our training center off of Tonquin Road, and we've done a lot of outreach, and that's been very well attended, not only locally, but regionally and nationally. And our goal is to continue to diversify our workforce and really represent the communities that we serve. We returned to normal operations on March 1st and are beginning to attend in-person events. However, our community rooms remain unavailable and will be included in a broader reintegration plan. And lastly, we are about to conduct public attitude research to better understand and serve our community. As you know, we recently were very successful in passing our bond, and we're extremely grateful for the ongoing community support that we received. We just received the AAA bond rating from Moody's and sold our first round of bonds. There was significant competition for those bonds, so we got an additional $9 million in incentives and a very good rate at 1.49. So that will kick off our project list. We'll be very busy over the next few years. That will include replacement of response vehicles, including fire engines, trucks, and medical vehicles, fire station improvements with seismic upgrades, security features, expansion of living quarters, and that will hit 10 of 29 stations. And then a significant investment in our training center with safety upgrades, which is, as you know, very close in proximity to Wilsonville off of Tonquin Road. This may look familiar to you. This is a chart that we show annually, and this kind of gives you the breakdown of what's going on in your area, split between the three stations, station 52, 56, and 54. And I'll just kind of walk through this with you. If you look at the top there, that has the total incidents in the city, in the community, at 3194. As you go down in the upper left-hand side, it gives categorizes the call types. And the largest percentage of calls at 82% is EMS. And that's consistent throughout our fire district. And frankly, nationally, about 80% of 911 calls are EMS in nature. And then going down, you'll see that we further break calls down into subcategories, and that informs training initiatives, equipment, and that's been extremely helpful for us to watch those trends. In the lower left-hand side, we track calls down to the hour of the day, and you'll see about 4 o'clock, we typically see a spike through the evening hours, and then it starts to drop down into the late hours of the evening. Day of week as well, no significant increase depending upon the day there in Wilsonville. And calls from 2017 to 2021, there was a small decrease in calls over the last couple of years, and we theorized that people were kind of sheltering in place and staying at home during the early phases of COVID. And now we've seen an increase as people are out and about more. And then if you look in the upper right-hand side there, that's what we call a heat map, and the brightest colors are where we see call density, and those tend to be where our care homes are and our adult foster care homes. You'll notice that there's one right near Station 54, and that's the Charbonneau community. So we're very pleased that we have a station located there to be able to serve that community and that demand for call. And then the lower right-hand side, there you have Station 52, 56, and 54, and kind of the breakdown percentage of calls. We anticipate that Station 54 will increase significantly when we get a full year under our belt. Station 54 was completed and opened in September. This is a picture of the crews there. We have a station captain and a firefighter, and then the other two shifts, we have a company officer and a firefighter. They operate out of a transport-capable rescue, and they respond on all call types within their area. Obviously, they are very close in proximity to the community of Charbonneau, and they have great freeway access to feed back into Wilsonville and north. We'll be having an open house, and the invite will go out soon. Hopefully, once we are able to get back into our primary operating mode, and we're shooting for this summer. We're in the middle of a pilot program called CHARM. It's Community Health and Resource Management. And really, it's a single person on a car, and their job is to go out and visit with high utilizers and really put them in the right lane of resource management. And in the end, what we're hoping to do is reduce the number of calls so that keeps our heavy assets, our additional engines, medics, rescues available for the higher acuity Code 3 calls. Additionally, we're in a partnership with Clackamas County to do some opioid overdose and management, and that's been very successful, that partnership. We've had a busy couple of years in the wildfire environment, and we've learned a lot from past seasons, and we've implemented some changes. We have some new protocols. We've been hyper-focused on training in preparation for our upcoming fire season. Recently, there was the passage of Senate Bill 762 to increase mitigation in urban interface areas, and we have one of our assistant chief on the governor's Wildfire Response Council, which also helps local efforts for homeowners and TVFNR to prevent and respond to wildfires. And And as mentioned earlier, we want to conduct outreach in new and different ways to more people in our community. So we started an interactive newsletter called Safety First, highlights seasonal safety information. And we conducted several wildfire webinars to help homeowners prepare for emergencies in their area. And with that, I am happy to answer any questions. See, there's some hands up. I guess, do I call on you or Mayor?
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Council President Ockervall.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. Thank you for being with us in the meeting today. You just briefly mentioned something about public attitude research that you are planning on doing or moving into, and I wondered if you could expand on that and explain exactly what that was and what you're looking to find and how it might be used.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. Well, in the past, we've used Campbell and DeLong for that, and we've used them for many years. And really, we try to understand what the priorities of our public, are as we go out and, are trying to be good stewards of their money, whether it's for a levy, for a bond, or just in general, and things like fast and effective response, diversity within our workforce, fire stations. We really try to mine information, and that informs our business decisions as well as deployment.
Excellent. And is that something that would then also be wrapped into a future presentation? Because it occurs to me there may be some learnings in there for us as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd have to touch base with Chief Cassandra Olden on that, and I'm sure she would be happy to do that presentation.
Thank you.
You bet. We have two hands up.
Councilor Linville.
Thank you, and thank you for coming and presenting. My question is it possible for us to get data from you folks on opioid overdose frequency in our community? I think it would be good information for us to have. I think there's a perception that we don't have that happen here very much. So it'd be really great to get that information if you have it.
Absolutely, that's a great question. Be happy to pass that on to you. I'll work with our EMS chief, Steve Bowie, and we'll get you that information.
Thank you. Councilor Lehan.
Yes, I wanted to ask a couple questions about recruitment in the age of diversity. Do you have Spanish speakers in the department? I'm presuming that you do, but do you make an effort to recruit for Spanish speakers, or because our community includes a significant Latino community?
Yes, thank you for the question. I appreciate it. Absolutely, we do. And in that particular slide that I showed, that was a picture of Captain Gennaro Esparza. We have many folks that are involved in our second language that will lean on and help us with outreach and recruitment, and that's been very successful. And we continually try to diversify, but absolutely we do.
And then are most of your new hires brand new to the fire service, or are most of your new hires from other departments?
Great question. It depends on the academy. The current academy that we have is fairly young, and so many of them are just finishing, fire science school or volunteering and just getting into their first career job. In the past, we've had many other firefighters move from Eugene or Salem and come with experience. So it really kind of depends on the makeup of that individual academy, but we get both.
Well, I mean, I know that Tualatin Valley is a great department to work for, so I presume a lot of people may try to get into that department from other departments. I don't know if you knew, but I worked for the Vancouver Fire Department back in the 80s when the first push was on to hire women in the fire service. And at the time, Seattle had kind of put the other fire service, so many in Oregon and Washington, to shame when they were dragging their feet on hiring women. And Seattle went after it aggressively and recruited from UW soccer team, the women's soccer team, and the women's rugby team. And I mean, they aggressively went after recruiting women who were likely to be successful, and they had all these women who were successful. So in the fire service, and other fire departments were claiming that women just couldn't do it. So I thought that was a good example of being sincere in your recruitment policies to get people that you know will succeed. But
Yeah.
so I'm presuming that we've come a long way since the 80s.
Yeah, well, like I mentioned in our numbers, we're at 7% nationally.
Yeah.
It's kind of a
That's great.
4%. And we've been very successful with we have a single role paramedic program, and they can promote over to the fire side. And that has really actually increased our diversity over the last couple of years. So that's been wildly successful for us.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I'm glad to hear that. You have a good recruitment policy.
Good point. Councillor West.
Have you guys had difficulty in the same way that the police have had in the Portland area in retaining staff? It sounds like you have a lot of people retiring, but I know that right now our law enforcement is chronically understaffed and having morale issues and difficulty actually like staying staffed due to political rioting and chaos and just a lack of like leadership that supports firsthand responders. Have you guys had an issue with that also within your guys' department? And if so, how are you guys overcoming that and finding good candidates that can do the job well despite those challenges?
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's a great question. We have been extremely fortunate. We are what I would call a destination department, and we have members that will come from other states, other departments locally that want to be part of Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue. We are down staff-wise, but as I mentioned earlier, I think most of that's due to injury, illness, and retirements. Occasionally, we will have somebody that leaves, just to move to a different part. We had a firefighter a few years ago that moved up to Washington. Family members are up there, so it's not uncommon for us to have somebody leave, but it's not a problem for us, and we have been very lucky that we have people that really want to be here.
Councillor Linville.
I just have a quick question. Do you have an in-house paramedic training program?
We do not. Most of the folks that we hire either come with a paramedic, but occasionally we will have people that want to get their paramedic while they are hired with us, but we don't train them. They will go to a school while they're working and then upgrade to paramedic.
Yeah, okay. All right. That's kind of what I thought too. Thank you.
I'm glad to hear these questions about workforce development and also to see from our counselors and interest in our fire department. I wanted to comment that I'm really glad to see your CHARM. I was trying to think of the acronym, the CHARM program that you've started with somebody to go visit with people. I really love that idea, and wanted to reinforce that we continue to be showing leadership in Wilsonville for our fire department and for our public safety and police department, and have seen them now starting to hire a behavioral health specialist. And I think that we see a lot of good for coming from opportunities for the public, whether it's neighborhoods, different groups, to be able to meet with people from the Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue. And I'm just going to say also our Wilsonville Police. I just want to bring them in because I think we have a lot to be thankful for in terms of the leadership that we show in supporting both of these departments and that you work together. So is anything that you can, that you have to say to us about how we can be even more supportive or help with sharing the word about recruiting? What can the city council do to help you be more successful?
Well, that's a great question, and I appreciate your earlier comments. Thank you for saying that. We believe that we have to continue to be creative to drive down the 911 call use and put people in the right lane of healthcare. So thank you for saying that. And I would just say, we appreciate your support. I can't think of anything off the top of my head that, I would ask, but just ongoing support of our efforts. We really do appreciate it.
All right, thank you. We heard about more interesting jobs here in Wilsonville, great place to live, work, and play. So thank you for helping to keep it safe.
Thank you so much.
For coming to our meeting.
Thank you.
Very great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So that brings us to our next presentation under communications with Ms. Mombert about our Arbor-Villebois Community Enhancement Program.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This evening we have Tom Vaughn with us from the Arbor-Villebois Homeowners Association, and they will present their community enhancement program that they recently completed.
Good evening, Mayor Fitzgerald and the city councilors. My name is Tom Vaughn. I am past president for 5 years for the Arbor HOA. I also have Joe Sharpstein is on the call tonight. He is a past board member as well. And Joe and I kind of spearheaded the storm damage when it happened last February of 2021 and saw it through. The Arbor-Villebois Owner Association is very appreciative of the $10,215 SROZ grant by the city of Wilsonville. These funds helped us to complete the cleanup of the tree damage caused by the ice storm in February of 2021. Our HOA in 2021 spent $72,300 to clean up the storm damage in our over 17-acre and 1,400 tree HOA. The damage in our neighborhood was extensive. This unexpected expense was a serious drain on our contingency funds. And what I can tell the city is because we do the right thing, we had enough money in our contingency to cover that $70,000 bill unexpected without asking our homeowners to pony up any more money. So that was a positive. Really, that's my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions regarding the ice storm that the council would have. And I just want to say we thank you for your support.
Thank you, Mr. Vaughn. I wanted to just, Mr. Sharpstein, thank you for coming tonight. And I think as part of the community enhancement program, as a recipient, we appreciate you coming to report on this so that we can see how those funds are used. And just to recap for everybody, our community enhancement program is something that we have in Wilsonville because we have a transfer station, which is part of the Metro Refuse Management program. And as a result of that, there is a sort of a fee that comes to Wilsonville to, in essence, make up for some of the impact of having that transfer station here. And there are ways that qualifying groups can apply to use some of those funds. So we appreciate you coming back to report on this. Councilor West.
You're muted, Councilor.
Oh, I'm still muted. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I should probably understand this by now. Tom and Mr. Sharpstein, thank you so much for coming and giving us your presentation. Tom, quick question for you. As you gave your presentation, you mentioned around just over $10,000 in grant funds. If I remember correctly, the committee awarded a little bit more than that. Was that all that was needed, or was there a change in that figure?
Thank you for asking that question, Councilor West. The original grant that we left at the meeting with was $20,800. Apparently the grant, under my misunderstanding, only covered SROZ. So that really put a limit onto what portion of that grant money we could get. And I had to go back to a lot of invoices. Everything had to be completed after August 5th of this last year. And I met with Zoe and Carrie Rappold, and went through all of our SROZ zones in the HOA, and really got as much as we could of that $20,800, but we didn't have enough damage in those particular areas to warrant the total amount.
Thank you for explaining that.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I don't see any other, this is a chance for any other comments or questions. I'm not seeing any, and I really appreciate you taking time to come to the meeting and use those funds to help with some of the damage. And thankfully, this February closed out without an ice storm.
Yes, it did. All right,
have a great evening. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, thank you. That brings us to citizen input and community announcements. And this is an opportunity for visitors to address the City Council on items not on the agenda. It's also a time to address items that are on the agenda but are not scheduled for a public hearing. Staff and the City Council will make every effort to respond to questions raised during citizens input before tonight's meeting ends or as quickly as possible thereafter. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes, and you can use the raise hand feature of Zoom to let us know if you'd like to provide comments. Do we have anyone wishing to make comments?
We do not, Mayor.
Okay, that brings us to councilor comments, liaison reports, and meeting announcements. And I just will share that this is a chance for our councilors who are assigned to various meetings to represent our city business around the region to and within our city to report on their work on those committees and what's going on, and also to make other reports and announce when their meetings will be coming up that people would like to know about. And we'll start with Council President Ockervall.
Thank you. I have 3 things this evening that I wanted to touch on. The first is an Urban Renewal Task Force meeting, which I attended last week. And this task force includes members from our community. It includes taxing jurisdictions in our area, some of our partners at Washington County, Clackamas County, and the business community as well. And we are looking at likely doing some monthly meetings for the next short while with the goal to gather feedback for a policy document, a new urban renewal policy document that will eventually then be presented to council. I believe the last one was done in 2014. So there will be an update to that work and looking at our future. The next thing I wanted to mention is that March 18th, so next week, is Transit Employee Day. And I just wanted to take a quick moment to express my appreciation for our wonderful transit employees here in the city of Wilsonville. I'm very proud of the work that you do to benefit city residents and our businesses and really the region as a whole. Thank you so much. I think we're all quite proud of our smart employees and grateful for your role in our city. And the third thing that I wanted to mention, I wanted to recognize the invasion of Ukraine, and that this is something that's on the hearts and minds of many people in, across the world, and also in our city in Wilsonville. And, I think now and many times when we see this kind of pain and destruction, we wonder what we can do. You can find reputable online sites where you can choose to support humanitarian aid. I think we can also choose to show alignment and dedication to common values that we have in our community. Truth, transparency, respect for the rights and dignity of others, accountability, kindness and compassion and empathy. And I believe that as city leaders, we've seen that human rights, democratic principles, and peace, they all play a very important role in safe and prosperous communities. And I thank our community members in Wilsonville for joining us in fostering these beliefs in our city. And that is it for my comments tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President Ockervall. I appreciate those comments. Councilor West.
Not much to report here. I do really want to second what Council President Ockervall took a minute to take a time to discuss something that we're all feeling right now and the repercussions of that across the globe. And thank you so much for articulating that so well that I just want to give you thumbs up and agree with you and link arms with you in those sentiments. This last week or so, we've been really busy with some HR issues and stuff as city councilors, and so we bugged in a lot of extra hours doing some of our primary functions as city councilors. So I know that we have all put quite a bit of work into that, and look forward to a positive outcome for our city as we continue to do that work. And then also, I want to give everybody a heads up that we have some grants that are, the applications are due by Friday, that are really important, and I hope that people take a chance to review. We have the Community Opportunity Grant Program and then the Community Tourism Grant Program. Each of those are $25,000 piece, and they provide a lot of valuable funds to our community. That application process, if I'm correct, is due by this Friday, so not that far away. And so get a chance to check those things out. And that's really all I had to add this week.
Thank you. Councilor Linville. I think you're muted.
Not Councilor Leanne?
Oh, excuse me.
We are out of order.
Councilor Lehan, please.
I would defer to Councilor Leanne.
Well, okay then. I thought I was going last. Anyway, I will second the concerns regarding the Ukraine. I switched my flag from the field of grain and the blue sky, which is where this flag comes from for Ukraine. So second those feelings. As far as things that I have been involved with besides the meetings that Councilor West referred to, was the Aurora Airport PAC meeting, and just to follow up with a couple of things after the mayor reported on that, I want to recognize the citizens who attended the PAC and the meeting that followed the PAC. We had, I forgot to get the count, but somewhere 20, 30 people were there, and a lot of them commented, and they brought up a number of the issues, both regarding the size of planes and the volume of planes and the noise factors, but also the land use issues, which are a whole another, it's kind of like two things. One is the expansion of the size and number of planes coming in and out of Aurora, and then also the land uses surrounding there, which currently have no municipal oversight. So a lot of the other issues that were brought up included things like sewer service and fire flow and stormwater runoff, and where are these things being provided that when they're building all these buildings there, and road improvements leading in and around there. So looking forward to the future, we will be, as the mayor said, we were frustrated in that we didn't get the materials until late the day before, and didn't have an opportunity to really go through them. So I'm hopeful that will be corrected going forward, and encourage our citizens to remain involved. And part of that is as a part of the city's comprehensive plan update, there's a good neighbor policy is part of the comprehensive plan update is to create a good neighbor policy with the Aurora State Airport. The city's planning division is conducting an online community survey at Let's Talk Wilsonville, which is at letstalkwilsonville.com. And that survey runs through March 13. So you have an opportunity to weigh in on issues surrounding the Aurora Airport and their master planning process, because that's what they are deeply involved in, is coming up with a master plan for how they go forward. And they need to involve the communities around the airport. So whether you're a citizen of Wilsonville or just a neighbor of the airport, you can participate in this survey. Also, the city is hosting 2 online community conversations about this good neighbor policy with the Aurora State Airport. These community meetings are being held on March 9 and March 10. And you can get more information on the survey and the community meetings at letstalkwilsonville.com. I think that's all the information I need to pass on. But if the mayor thinks of something else I missed.
I would just say that you can also, if you just go to the city website, all of those things will be accessible there. And thank you for your time on that committee and several others. And sorry that I was out of order on this, but you're all helping me get back. And now we'll ask for Councilor Lindo.
And I am happy to be at the end. I also attended as a listener the PAC meeting for the Aurora Airport and the open house that followed. Interesting comments, and I believe that those, the transcripts of those are going to be available on the Oregon Department of Aviation website at some point. But I wanted to mention that, and I don't want to confuse people about which survey is which, but the Oregon Department of Aviation also has an online survey that is open until March 25th. And this survey, they say, takes 10 to 15 minutes, and it will help the Oregon Department of Aviation understand the airport's needs for the next 20 years. So it will inform the master planning process as well as the advisory committee that's working on it. So just Google Oregon Department of Aviation and then go down to the bottom of their website, and you'll see Aurora Airport Survey. Click on that and it will take you directly to the link Again, it's only going to be open until March 25th, and I encourage all Wilsonville residents to take the survey and provide the input. In addition to that, I am working on scheduling, working with the Willamette Falls Locks Commission to schedule our next meeting, which is going to be a status update and next steps on a closure agreement, a memorandum of understanding between the Corps of Engineers and the new Locks Authority. And it should be maybe one of the final things that the commission will do. We will sunset in June, and then Councillor Lehan's group in the Locks Authority will take over to run the locks. And then, as the mayor indicated, I have been trying to have a conversation with the Clackamas Workforce Partnership partners, organizations, to see if we can get some representation from Wilsonville to have input into workforce training, workforce programs that are being planned for all of Clackamas County. And because I am an elected official, I don't meet the membership eligibility. So I've been contacted by them, and they are exploring if there is interest by local officials to engage further with the public workforce system and other community networks. And so we're trying to put together a casual conversation to talk about that. And I think they are trying to determine what it is that we're really concerned about. So I'm looking forward to that. We did a doodle poll to get some sense of who's interested and who's available. And then the only other thing is that I will attend the Clackamas County Coordinating Committee Metro Subcommittee on St. Patrick's Day. I am sure it be an insignificant event for them that it happens on St. Patrick's Day, but it's my youngest daughter's birthday, so I always know when that day comes up that it's an important one. And that is all of the comments that I have.
Thank you, Councilor Linville. If they turn that meeting into a St. Patrick's Day party, let me know, because usually they're pretty dense meetings. I mean, pretty information-packed, but maybe it'll be a St. Patrick's Day party.
Oh, Mayor, I just had one other comment that I wanted to make, and I neglected to say anything about the events that are going on in Ukraine. And I increasingly think about and listen carefully to the mayors of those cities. And just can only imagine what they are going through, having their cities just simply destroyed and their citizens scrambling and worrying about, just the devastation and their own safety for their families. And so, my heart just goes out to them, and I just can't imagine what that must be like.
Thank you, Councilor Linville, and I, like all of us, feel the same way and appreciate the fact that there are ways that we've been seeing in the local newspapers. Everyone probably has their own trusted partner they can talk to about ways, maybe it's an organization that you know of or an advisor who can talk about effective ways to help support people in that fight in Ukraine and refugee organizations. And, you know, it just leaves everyone feeling bereft and wanting to do something. And I think looking for that one opportunity that fits what I can do is something that helps a little bit. So, and I appreciate Council President Ockerville's comments that reflect what we've learned in our community are a lot of shared values for truth, transparency, respect, dignity, and kindness. So thank you. Well, with that, we will move to our consent agenda, and I would like to ask the city attorney to please read the consent agenda.
Resolution number 2954, a resolution of the City of Wilsonville granting an exemption from property taxes under ORS 307.540 to ORS 307.548 for Autumn Park Apartments, a low-income apartment development owned and operated by Northwest Housing Alternatives, Inc. Resolution number 2955, a resolution of the City of Wilsonville granting an exemption from property taxes under ORS 307.540 to ORS 307.548 for Charleston Apartments, a low-income apartment development owned and operated by Northwest Housing Alternatives, Inc. Resolution number 2956, a resolution granting an exemption from property taxes under ORS 307.540 to ORS 307.548 for Creekside Woods Limited Partnership, a low-income apartment development owned and operated by Northwest Housing Alternatives, Inc. Resolution number 2957, a resolution granting an exemption from property taxes under ORS 307.540 to ORS 307.548 for Rain Garden Limited Partnership, a low-income apartment development owned and operated by Caritas Community Housing Corporation. Resolution number 2958, a resolution granting an exemption from property taxes under ORS 307.540 to ORS 307.548 for Wiedemann Park, a low-income apartment development owned and operated by Accessible Living, Inc. Resolution number 2960, a resolution of the City of Wilsonville supporting a 2022 grant application to the Oregon State Parks Local Government Grant Program for the trail at the park at Merrifield Rehabilitation. And finally, minutes of the February 24, 2022 City Council meeting.
Thank you. Council President Ockerville, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as read?
Yes, I move to approve the consent agenda as read.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. That brings us to continuing business, and we have a public hearing for land use. I'd like to ask the city attorney to read the ordinance on second reading, please.
Yes, I will, and I will note that there is not going to be a staff report tonight, and staff is available if there are any questions, and I can say from the city attorney's perspective, we have received no comments since the first reading. Ordinance number 854, second reading, an ordinance of the City of Wilsonville annexing approximately 9.74 acres of property located on the west side of Southwest Stafford Road, north of Southwest Frog Pond Lane, into the city limits of the City of Wilsonville, Oregon. The land is more particularly described as tax lots 100, 300, and 302, and a portion of Southwest Stafford Road right-of-way, Section 12D, Township 3 South. Range 1 West, Willamette Meridian, Clackamas County, Oregon.
And do you want to will you read ordinance 855 right now, or should we complete the hearing for the first one?
I think I can combine them if that's what you'd prefer to do. You'll need to vote on them separately, but I can read them together if you'd like. An ordinance of the City of Wilsonville approving a zone map amendment from the Clackamas County Rural Residential Farm Forest 5-acre zone to the residential neighborhood zone on approximately 8.46 acres on the west side of Southwest Stafford Road, north of Southwest Frog Pond Lane. The land is more particularly described as tax lot 100, 300, and 302, section 12D, township 3 south, range 1 west, Willamette Meridian, Clackamas County, Oregon. Venture Properties, Inc. is the applicant. And so since they're read together, if you recite both as you open both numbers as you open the public hearing.
And we will vote on those separately.
Yes, please.
I call to order the public hearing regarding proposed ordinance numbers 854 and 855 on second reading. And although city council meetings are open to the public, this meeting may also be attended remotely in accordance with Oregon law. Information regarding how the public can attend this meeting remotely is posted at City Hall and on the city website. Public testimony was closed after the first reading. I ask once again, do any members of the City Council wish to abstain, declare a conflict of interest, or report on any ex parte contact or any information gained outside of the meeting?
I do not.
I do not either. I'm seeing none. At this time, we heard about this, but I'm just going to ask again, does staff have any follow-up information to present, or do any members of the City Council have questions for staff or for the city attorney? Council President Ockervall, I would like to ask for a motion to close the public hearing.
I move to close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
I will second that.
Any discussion? Hearing no further discussion, I call for a vote on ordinance number 854 on second reading. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstain?
Don't have to, but
I think we need a roll call.
I was just
Roll
asking
call
that.
vote on second. I'm having a hard time hearing you, Mr. Cosgrove.
I'm sorry, I was just asking the city attorney if we had to do roll call because it's a second reading.
as long as it's a unanimous vote and all the votes are heard and seen, it's fine. And just to clarify, I think the motion was to close the public hearing, and then I think it combined with the vote.
I think we need a motion for this one. So I would move to adopt ordinance number 854 on second reading.
There you go. Thank you.
And I'll second that.
All in favor of adopting ordinance 854, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstain. Motion passes 5-0, and since we do have a unanimous vote and everyone's present, the city attorney advises we do not need to do a roll call. Does that sound good?
Your Honor, I would move that we adopt ordinance number 855 on second reading.
I second that.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor of ordinance number 855, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstain? The motion passes 5-0. If you desire to, I want to add one more important appeal right about this. If you desire to appeal this decision to the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals, you must make application stating the grounds of the appeal in the form and within the time frame prescribed by law.
And just to clarify, that appeal right was read for both ordinances, correct?
And the appeal right applies to ordinance 854 and 855.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Your Honor, I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. The hearing is closed. That brings us to the city manager's report.
Okay, Mayor, thank you. And if you want to put your HR hats back on that Councilor West referenced earlier, I know there was some discussion during your interviews that the city council would like us to expedite the process as much as possible. So I received that message on Friday, and on Saturday we were able to clear some calendars, and so we were able to conduct the panel interview and the one-on-one with me today. I think between 1 and 3 o'clock we got all that done, and so we couldn't get it on for the executive session tonight because we didn't put it on the agenda. So I'm offering to you an opportunity, if you would like to do an executive session, to get a debrief. The purpose of the executive session would be to debrief you on the panel interview, and there's 2 candidates, as you well know, and they're one-on-ones with me, and that would be provided in a written format to you by Ms. Villagrana in the HR department. And we could do that as soon as Thursday or Friday, but I need to know your availability and preferences for either of those 2 days. We're not limited by time of day, so if it's something you could do in the early afternoon or in the mornings, if you're all fine with that, you just need to decide which day and what time you would like to do that, and then I could provide that information to the city recorder, and we could get that advertised, because I think, I'm certain we have to give 48 hours notice on that. The other things that we would bring to you, other than the write-up of those interviews, is we would bring to you the questions that were asked by the panels and by me, and then also we're conducting reference checks and would have that information to you at the time of your discussion. So I guess the first question is Thursday or Friday, and then once you decide that, you could tell me what time of day you would be available to have that discussion. And I would plan for 2 hours. I don't think it's going to take that long, but other than the city manager, this is your only other direct report, excluding the municipal court judge, of course. But this is a department head, so you'll want to have some time to talk about that.
And this is, I don't know that we described this, but this is for the position of the city attorney.
That's correct. I'm sorry. I should have said that at the top. Yes, it's the city attorney position.
Thank you. Well, I think we should decide this today, if we can. I would like to say that Thursday is almost book solid for me, but I have a lot of openings on Friday. Does anyone else have that in common?
I have that in common too, but I do not want to I can't change the hospital schedule, for my nursing schedule with just a couple days notice like that.
But we can do it in the evening.
But I can do it in the evening is what I'm trying to say. If we could work, okay. and a time in the evening for me would be like 6 o'clock.
I could do Thursday at 7.
I'm not available on Thursday evening.
Thursday evening.
Friday evening would be my best time at 6.
Friday evening is fine with me.
I'm fine Friday evening.
Okay.
So happy to spend my Friday night with all of you.
Okay, I haven't checked with Ms. Villagrana because she would be leading that process. I wouldn't be part of it. You would receive my observations in a written format. I think it's a discussion that council needs to have without me being present. So I will check with her tomorrow. She did indicate that she would be available and would make herself available. So I will check with her tomorrow. But unless you hear back from me differently, I would assume I heard 6 o'clock. Is that the desired time? We will plan for and advertise from 6 to 8 an executive session, and I will formalize that in the form of an email tomorrow so that you can all have that, and we will put it on your city calendars too. And I'll be annoying and send out a reminder the day before and the morning of so that you'll get inundated with notices.
And this is going to be by Zoom, just to confirm.
This will be done by Zoom, correct?
Okay. Thank you, everyone. And that will now bring us to any legal business.
So just one quick thing to circle back to the discussion you were having a little bit earlier. The governor's emergency order is being lifted this month. Your emergency order is in effect until June 1, I believe. So you could lift it or you can leave it. And I mean, leaving it doesn't mean you're doing anything except accept that you do keep your home rule authority should something change dramatically. You've got the emergency order in effect, and then you can use it as you see fit or not use it at all. It doesn't mean that you waiver from the governor's plan, but it gives you that flexibility. So if you wanted to get rid of it, we could do that at the next meeting, or we can just let it sit.
This is the first I've heard about this, so I haven't discussed it. Counselors, do you have a feeling about this, or do you want to wait to talk about it at the next meeting?
I have a feeling about it, but like you, I just had all kinds of feelings, but just like you were just hearing about it. So I don't know the best way to kind of jump in on this discussion.
We can bring it back at the next meeting. It's essentially, there's no harm in leaving it in place. It just gives us a little more flexibility from a home rule standpoint. If conditions on the ground change here in Wilsonville or Clackamas County. So it just gives flexibility, but we can certainly bring back more information. You don't have to decide anything tonight.
Brian, does it change in practice how people behave or regulations that they have to follow, or that preempted by the governor stopping the emergency order in just a couple days here?
What it essentially does is if we wanted to have rules that were more strict than the state, then we could, just because we have home rule. I'm not advising that we do that, but you know, with all things COVID, you know, it pays to be a little flexible and assume that we can't ever outsmart Mother Nature when it comes to stuff like this. So it just gives the flexibility. But again, you don't have to make any decisions tonight. We can bring it back.
Thank you.
Sounds like we can sleep on it till the next meeting and,
yes.
hope for the best. Most importantly, hope for the best, that we don't need it.
Mayor, I just received real-time confirmation that Andrea is available Friday at 6, so we're a go. So we'll get that advertised tomorrow.
Very good. Thank you, everyone, for a good meeting. The meeting is adjourned at 8:23 p.m.
Good night.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Night.